You're listening to the Snob OS Podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs. Yo, this is Terrence Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And this is Nika Monfort, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
And welcome back to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We definitely want to welcome you back to another show. This is episode 279 of the Snob OS Show. As per usual, we always want to thank those who've been rocking with us for this long, people who are supporting us, whether it be in spirit or actual financially. If you want to become a financial supporter, please go to patreon.com/snoboscast. Become a member. You give us a big shout out, give us some love, help us keep the lights on. And in turn, you'll get access to exclusive content that you will not hear on this show. You get to hear the show a little bit early because we do stream it live. For any Patreon member that's a part of our community, you can actually sit and listen to the show as we record it. So those are just a few of the perks that you get for being a Patreon supporter. So we definitely want to say thank you to those who have been supporting us thus far. We're going to jump right into the show. And as per usual, we're going to jump into the Lowdown where we talk all things Apple. The first I want to talk about is call it Apple account. So everybody who has an iPhone, iPad, whatever the case may be, you are more than familiar with an Apple ID. That's what you use to sign into your devices. That's what you use to add subscriptions, whether it be Apple subscriptions or third-party subscriptions that are integrated into the App Store. You use that Apple ID for everything that is Apple. Well, next month, when the iOS 18 rolls out, when the new iPhones, when all the new products come out, Apple's going to make another change, and they're going to ditch the Apple ID and replace it with an Apple account. Now, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to sign out of nothing. You don't have to create a new Apple account. Instead of it being called an Apple ID, it's just going to be called an Apple account. So just wanted to let folks know about that. Do you believe that that's going to cause any confusion, or are people just going to get the gist?
I think people get the gist. It looks like it's just a label change.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
They're changing ID to account.
Yep, that's it, which makes more sense because people look at the account that they log in to their iPhone, to their Mac, to their iPad as an account.
Yeah.
You know, so Apple's just kind of saying, all right, it's an Apple account versus an Apple ID. You know, maybe that confuses people because I've seen a lot of people confuse their Apple ID with the email address that they use for their Apple ID. But if you just call it an Apple account, in my opinion, people understand when they log into an account, they have to use their email and they have to use a password. Yeah. Well, with Apple ID, I've seen people get confused because in addition to just signing up for services, you can actually use your Apple ID as an email address, which is what I use. I use it as my personal email address. Only certain things come to that email address. I've got Gmail accounts. I've got all these other accounts for these, subscription based, stuff that I may not look at. But my Apple ID, I actually use as an email account for my most important things. So it makes sense to me that Apple would call it an Apple account and you're using that email address to log in to the Apple account.
Yeah, it may take a little time for people to get to rework their neurons and such to, replace Apple ID with the Apple account. But for the most part, even if you call it an Apple ID, people are going to know what you mean until eventually it rolls out of the nomenclature and it's known as an Apple ID. An Apple account.
All right, we're going to move right on to the next thing. AppleCare Plus renewal has been extended to 45 days after expiration. So if you have bought AppleCare and you've decided for whatever reason that you've let it lapse or you don't want to do it, instead of just having 15 days after the deadline expires for AppleCare, you've got an extra 15 days to make it a total. Let me say it again. Instead of just having 30 days after your AppleCare expires, you've got 30 days to renew your AppleCare. Well, Apple has added an additional 15 days to make it a total of 45 days after expiration. So my question to you is, do you think that this is because Apple's being nice and like, oh, we understand we want to give people as much time as possible to make sure they protect their devices. Or Apple's like, we need to give them a little bit more time so they can give us that money because we don't want to lose out on that money. So we'll give them a little bit more time to make that decision.
I think they're like, let's give them a little more time to make a decision, because a lot of times people are like, I don't really need this. I don't need AppleCare. I can do without it. Until you need AppleCare, then it's like, oh, so this give people an extra couple weeks to be like, do I really need this? Do I not? Because I know quite a few people who don't have, say, their iPhones in any sort of protective case. And I'm like, y'all are just out here living wild and free. And so it's like, I'm really surprised that people, are a little bit reckless with these very expensive little devices.
Me. I don't put a case on my phone. I don't. Oh, God. I used to, but then I was like, I spent with this phone like $1,200 for this phone. I'm gonna show off my phone. Putting it in a case is like, why cover up?
Use a clear case. My case is clear.
Yeah, I could. I guess I could, but I've got the Pro Max. I've got the Pro Max. Yeah, I've got the Pro Max, and it's already big, and it's just like, I'm not trying to add any more girth to my phone. And plus, I want to show it off.
Of course. I think they're just giving, I don't think they're being nice at all. I think that they're giving it some more time so people will be more open to potentially buying the AppleCare for whatever the device is.
Okay. All right.
It's all about money. They're not being nice.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Especially the AppleCare joints is not cheap, so they want to make sure they give you every opportunity to re-up when the time comes.
Right.
All right. So the next thing I got is Apple Podcasts are now available on the web. So instead of you having to have an Apple device, instead of you having to open the podcast app, whether it be for an iPhone, iPad, or Mac, you can now access Apple Podcasts by simply just going to podcasts.apple.com. And it's not just limited to Safari. Any device, any browser can now access podcasts. So if you've got a Windows machine, if you've got a Google Chromebook, if you're using Firefox, if you're using DuckDuckGo, Chrome, whatever the case may be, if you've got a browser and you can connect to the internet, you can go to Apple Podcasts, and Apple actually access Apple Podcasts via the web. So what do you think? Is this a good idea? Or do you think that Apple is maybe diluting the extra specialness that came with having a Apple device? Because, Apple does a excellent job. Most companies do an excellent job of making their services work the best on their own platforms. But now Apple is kind of taking podcasts out of that ecosystem and making it available to anybody with a browser, anybody with a any sort of device. Is device agnostic, is browser agnostic. Do you think that's starting to take a little bit away, including Apple Maps? And I want to say Apple Music is also available on the web. So now you got Apple Maps, you got Apple Music. Now you have Apple Podcasts. All are available with or without an Apple device. Is that a good idea, or is that just good because that's more people paying for services?
I think they are expanding the uses of these apps. And I think they're doing this because with Apple Intelligence and the next wave of apps and features, I think it's kind of like, if you think of it as a tiered experience, now Apple Podcasts, Apple Music, those things, I won't say they're bottom tier, but they're lower tiered as in relation to some of the things that have coming down the pipe. So these Apple Podcasts, Apple Maps, Apple Music used to be exclusive for Apple devices. I think there is technology coming down the pipeline that is going to replace these type of applications in its exclusiveness. They're bringing more, I think, features and apps that are going to be exclusive. And now these are like, everybody, you got your Spotify's, you got your Titles, you got, all these other services that provide podcasts on the web. podcast music on the web that they can access. So it's like the market is kind of wide open. And I think they may be okay with doing this now, simply because what's coming down the pipeline is going to continue the lore, so to speak, of Apple devices to say, well, I can now access Apple Podcasts or Apple Music or Apple Maps, but you can't access ABC, DEF, GHI. That's the new hotness over on Apple. So you can kind of have these couple of things over here. We've gotten our exclusive use out of those, but do you have this new hot fire?
Right. So I think it's AI. And what I mean by that is OpenAI, Copilot, Gemini, Bard, whatever else is out there is scraping the internet for content. I think Apple's like, well, we don't necessarily want you to steal the content, but we want to make our content available for AI. So by putting podcast.apple.com out there, that allows these generative AI scrapers to source that additional information to provide it to users. So if a person, whether they're an iPhone user or not, and they open up Copilot or they open up, Gemini or whatever Chat GPT, whatever the case may be, and say, hey, I am in my mid 40s. Give me a list of podcasts that show me how to lose weight in my 40s, right? Before this, you wasn't pulling up no Apple Podcasts unless it was on the website, unless, the podcast had a website like ours. We have stopOScast.com. That's being scraped, but that is our website, right? That's going to give you a bunch of stuff in addition to being able to play the website. Well, by Apple putting podcast.apple.com, all of that information gets scraped in addition to having to look through websites to find a podcast. You actually can find the podcast because the AI is scraping podcast.apple.com. That's just my speculation.
Could be.
All right. So the next thing I got, I know you mentioned you're looking for a pair of AirPods Max, and the rumors are that there may be an AirPods Max coming this fall. That's just a rumor. We haven't substantiated anything, but I say that to bring up the idea of, if you are planning on getting AirPods Max and you are out in public and you're walking and you're listening to music, make sure your head is on a swivel, because there have been reports of, I call them drive-by thefts, to where people, if you're walking, picture you walking down the street, got your headphones on, you got the active noise cancellation, it's sounding all good, you've kind of tuned out the rest of the world.
Bopping around, listening to whatever in your own zone. Okay.
Yeah, you're in the zone. You've tuned out the world. Well, you've also tuned out these two dudes that are creeping up behind you on a moped, and they're just waiting for the perfect opportunity to roll up, snatch them AirPods off your head, and pull off. There are actual reports of people actually getting their AirPods Max stolen off the top of their heads on streets by people on scooters, on mopeds, that will actually bump the people and then simultaneously snatch the AirPods off of their heads. So I just wanted to include this story for those people who do have headphones on. You need to pay attention to what's going on, even
or
if
at least have the transparency mode on if you're outside.
Right. You should do that anyway, because ambulances, police sirens, anything,
a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
Right. That, typically you would think you would want to be isolated from, but you actually need to hear some of those things to keep you more aware of your surroundings. This story just cements the fact that you need to be paying attention to what's going on around you, whether you've got AirPod Maxes or not. I'm just of the mindset you need to have transparency on anyway, so you can be more alert. Now, just to give you another reason why you need to be more alert.
So are people really out for AirPods Max like this? These headphones haven't had a refresh in a minute. So a lot of these devices are older, and there's a market for stolen AirPod Maxes.
There's a market for anything free, especially if I can get it for free because I stole it and then sell it to somebody, whether it just be for parts, because you got to think AirPod Max, you still have to add those to your, to your
device.
Right. Well, you got to add them to we're going to call it our Apple account now. They're actually tied to your Apple account to where if they were get stolen, you could easily
You can find my, right?
Right. You could turn on Find My, you know, the thieves maybe could turn the devices off and then sell it to some pawn shop it, sell it on Craigslist, and, you know, some regular person comes along and says, oh man, I just found this deal, $200 on some AirPod Maxes. You buy them from the person, come to find out you can't use them, or even worse, somebody roll up on you because they got Find My.
You stole my AirPod.
Right. Now you're in a weird situation. It's like, all right, well, I don't know you.
I bought these.
Right. I'm not, I don't know you. I'm not just giving you these devices back. I bought this. Technically it's mine. And the other person's like, no, actually, I've got these mine. I can do the little ping thing. It'll make the little audible noise. So those are my headphones. And I'm like, nah, I pay for these. They mine. So now you're on it back and forth, you know, and while the thief is collected his paycheck, one was about his business
and gone. Yeah.
So it's definitely a market, especially if they can catch somebody slipping, and, you know, a person that's trying to buy them off of them may not know to, you know, ask, are these connected to, you know, an Apple ID? Are they connected to Find My? Are these stolen? You know, that is a legitimate question to ask when you're buying anything off of anybody, especially on the internet. Hey, are these stolen? And let them lie to you or let them tell you the truth. At least you know that there's a possibility. You ask the question. So if something pops off, you can be like, I asked that dude, you know, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, just want to make people
just
alert.
Snatching people AirPods off their heads. What?
You think of a pickpocket, you know, pickpockets, you know, slide into your purse, slide into your back pocket, slide into your backpack. You know, pickpockets typically do it to where you're not witnessing or you don't know what's happening.
Right.
But folks are gangster these days, man.
People are just out here just wilding out.
All right. Some of the two stories that I wanted to maybe have a little bit longer discussion with is this first one that just warms my soul.
Okay.
So there have been rumors that Apple has leaked their upcoming Apple event. You know, there's a person out there called Majin Buu, and he actually got a tip from a person who chose to remain nameless for anonymous reasons, tipped this guy onto the fact that the Apple event is going to be on September 10th is the date. And also the leak hinted at a long rumored capture button for operating the iPhone's camera and the new bronze color for the iPhone 16 Pro and the Pro Max. So all this information was leaked. I saw it all over the internet. And of course, since we don't really report on rumors like that, I just went on about my business, right? So this was like last week. Fast forward to this week, I'm looking for stories to include in the show. And I come across this sweetness story that the iPhone event leak that I just mentioned that dropped the date, dropped the capture button, dropped the new color. It was all a hoax. And I'm just going to read this quote. In a message to Caught Mac, a video editor who goes by the name of Lore, Lore, confirmed that he created the bogus invite mainly because he was, quote, sick and had nothing to do. The Cult of Mac was one of the sites that originally recorded or reported on the leak. And they actually went back and interviewed this guy named Lore, and come to find out he's a 14-year-old Italian video editor who fooled the whole internet with this fake iPhone 16 invite. The fake Apple invite, of course, like I mentioned, dropped the date, dropped the color, and dropped that new the capture button. And then to take it a step further, this guy named Lore is the one who reached out to the Apple leaker Majin Buu and tricked him via messages thread. So he said, yo, I got this hot new leak, yada, 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 this, that, and the third, and said it in such a way that tricked this Apple leaker, who then in turn dropped it on the internet that Apple event is going to be this date. They're going to have this feature. It's going to be this color. So again, that just goes back to what I was saying a episode or two ago about my perfect job at Apple. If you remember that, my perfect job would be to falsely put information like this out. So the tech journalists, all the websites, all the blogs can one be confused because they don't know what's true or what's not. Because I would send out
Right.
multiple things. I would send out this color. I would send out this color. I would send out this date. And I would send it to specific people to see,
To know who posted what.
right, right. Who, and that would be my whole job at Apple. So it seems like this guy, this 14-year-old Italian video editor, I don't know, maybe he was listening to Snob OS or whatever the case may be. He took the idea and was like, you know what, I'm gonna actually see if this works. And it looks official. The Apple event, you know, has the right font. It has the ready, set, capture as the title, which what Apple does. They put out this title and try to have people figure out what they mean by it. It had the right date. Everything looked legit. And these tech journalists, that all they're doing, because the phone ain't out yet, right?
Yeah.
So all they've been doing is talking about iPhone 16 rumors and iPhone 16 features and iPhone 16 leaks for the past month, in anticipation of
because they don't have anything to talk about, really.
And because they know people read that information, especially about leaks, is something, you know, it's almost like, ooh, I got a little bit of tea that nobody else has because I follow this leaker, I follow this website, I follow this blog regularly. So it's like you're on the inside if you know something before everybody else. And I think readers fiend for that. And I think these tech websites just feed them that information without doing, I don't want to say without doing any research, but clearly they've got their go-tos, and all they need to hear is just enough. And it has to look just kind of official enough for them to completely run with it. So
it's funny. I'm looking at this article, and Lore put on Twitter on Tuesday, quote, "Fun fact, I made the, quote, leaked Apple event invite in less than 10 minutes using Figma and an AI generated texture. And I sent it to the leaker just because I was bored." So this 14-year-old did all of this, all of the hubbub he did. It took him less than 10 minutes to trick some of the most, I'll say, visible AI leakers to get them to bite, and they did.
And bit they did. So I don't want to say egg on the face of these tech journalists and things like that, but I guarantee you going forward, they are going to, you know, look at these leaks or these anonymous tipsters or these leakers with a little bit more. Should we run this or should we not run it? And what are the blowback or what is the drawbacks if this is fake, if it's whatever the case may be? And that'll give them a little bit more pause. Yeah. Maybe they won't take leaks from anonymous people. They're like, you got to give me your source because we've been played before, you know, and we want to be able to attribute a name to this leak. So if something go down, we can be like, that's your guy right there, versus an anonymous person who didn't want to be named for anonymous reasons. Right.
Yeah. You got to give me some sort of credentials for me to believe you on this. What's this funny? 14-year-old kid in 10 minutes.
Yep. And I can imagine it happens all the time. And like I mentioned, it works. So like I said, Apple, if you're listening to the Snob Boy show, I'm looking for, I could use a part-time job. I would love to be able to disseminate false information so we can hide the real stuff.
I will be your official leaker.
Right. And I'll find the people, you know, I'll put on my, you know, internet sleuth hat.
Your sleuthing hat.
Right. And track down these people, you know, and out them, you know, because I wouldn't care.
Right.
All right. So the last story I have in the lowdown is Apple Maps now better than Google Maps. So I have a personal story. For the past 2 months, when I've been getting things delivered to the house, whether it be like Uber Eats or whether got a package from like any place other than like Amazon, they pretty much know where I live, but any place else, Target, Walmart, if we're getting groceries, we do this on a regular. Sometimes we get groceries delivered to the house. And for the past month or two, people have been going to the wrong address. So I'll have something delivered, you know, at the time it's supposed to show up, I'll get a text message or a phone call from the driver or whatever and say, hey, I'm at this church. The directions took me to this church, right? And there is a church, but it's behind my house, behind a forest. So you got to go through the church parking lot, got to go through a little forest. It's not a forest, you know, some trees,
a little shrubbery.
Yeah. But, you know, you can't see it at all, but you got to walk through that to get to my backyard, right? So I'm trying. So every time so much so that in the delivery instructions, I say,
It's
we
not a
we
church.
do not live at a church. Our house is in the neighborhood behind the church. If you go to the church, you're not at the right place. Make sure you go into the subdivision behind the church, and that'll get you to our address, right? So I've done this enough to where I've actually talked to some of the drivers, and I'm like, what are you using to get to my house? And most of the time, almost 100% of the time, they say Google Maps. It's Google Maps. So something has happened. Google updated something. Google switched something to where the
Google laid off a bunch of people.
Something.
They decimated their AI group, I think, part of their AI group. Yeah.
Something to where my address is changed in Google Maps. You put it in Apple Maps, it takes just fine. So when I saw this story, I was like, oh, you know what? I can personally weigh into this because, again, I'm an ecosystem person. I've always used Apple Maps and I've just waited on it to get better. And for me, it has actually gotten better. But the consensus of whether Apple Maps is better than Google Maps or vice versa, the consensus is Apple Maps UI, UX, which is user interface, user experience, is better and has more features on Apple. But Google Maps is still more reliable for directions. So I just wanted to get your input. Do you use Google Maps? Do you use Apple Maps? Do you play back and forth? Do you use something else? Do you use Waze? And then what is your go-to for getting directions on your iPhone?
I use Google Maps because I've had some not very great experiences with Apple Maps trying to take me into ditches, into lakes, into places that I am not supposed to be because that's not what the address is. So I haven't used Apple Maps in a minute. Sometimes I will kind of look and compare to see, as far as the timing, or if I go to something and it just defaults to Apple Maps, I'll use Apple Maps that way. But if I'm specifically looking for an app to do directions, I use Google Maps.
Okay. All right. Yes. People are saying, I'm looking in the store, people going back and forth talking about, Google's better for directions versus Apple is better for, street details, showing lanes in the streets and bus lanes and bike lanes. Apple does a better job with that. I've seen some instances to where people say Google Maps is better for outside versus Apple Maps is better for inside. Like if you're inside a mall, if you're inside of an airport, if you're inside of a train station or a public transportation depot, Apple Maps does a better job indoors versus Google Maps does a better job outdoors. As far like you mentioned, getting directions. All I can tell you is my house, Apple Maps wins because, again, from going forward, everything that I have delivered to the house, I always say, we do not live at a church. Please go into the subdivision behind the church to get to our address, please.
No church for us.
Nope. All right, so that's all I had for the lowdown. We're going to move into second string where we talk all things tech in general. So I've got two stories, but again, these are going to be pretty quick. Everybody remembers that CrowdStrike outage that affected pretty much everybody, that affected these Windows servers because this CrowdStrike software is supposed to update protections, and some little bug turned all the Windows devices into the blue screen of death, if you know what that is for all my Windows fans users. That blowback, in the wake of that, some of the CrowdStrike's competitors, as you would expect, be like, see, that's what you get for messing with CrowdStrike. You need to come over to X, Y, and Z because I can guarantee you ... So they were using CrowdStrike's failure as an opportunity to kind of possibly poach some of their business, right? The CrowdStrike CEO is kind of salty at that. CrowdStrike president Michael Centones states that, quote, our industry is built on trust. For rivals to take advantage of the meltdown to push their own products, quote, let themselves down because ultimately people know really quickly fact from possibly some shady commentary. So I just wanted to get your opinion. Is the president right? Because it's no fair for their competitors and some of these other companies to kick a dog while they're down, or you just got to hold this L because that's what you get.
Bro, you got to hold this L. If it was reversed and it wasn't CrowdStrike so much, they would be taking advantage. But because you're the one holding the doo-doo bag, you're like, it's not fair. You're not doing great business. They're doing excellent business, because if they want to, expand their market base, which they should, because if anything, this CrowdStrike outage showed us is there are a lot of people using CrowdStrike. And if you have a comparable, competitive product, then hell yeah, you should be trying to poach those people, because, the CrowdStrike thing was just, a cluster of foolishness. It was bad. And my guy, your company didn't do what they needed to do to protect people. And this is the fallout from it.
Right.
He can't possibly think that they weren't going to lose customers, even if these other companies didn't try and kind of come and poach people. He had to know that there are going to be people that left. Delta I think they have like a class action lawsuit against them now, because they weren't refunding people their money the way they should, based on some new rules that Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg put in. So, bro, take this L, fix your infrastructure, fix your deployments, and maybe try and rebrand, do some sort of rollout to say, hey, we're back. We did A, B, C, and D to ensure that this won't happen again, or nothing similar to. You're just going to have to take this L and let these people steal the clients that want to go.
Yep, that's the game. That is the game. Like you mentioned,
is the game.
Like you mentioned, had it been reversed and crowd surf or whatever, strike crowd messed up and, caused all these computers to be messed up, you better believe CrowdStrike would have been like, come on over. Yeah. Like the Dave Chappelle Prince meme to where he's holding his hands. That's the name of the game. It's like competition. Competition is good for the consumer, and shame on a company for not trying to use this as an opportunity to big up their business.
And shame on the CEO for out here whining like a little, like baby. Like a person, like a baby. Yeah, baby is a better word. Like a baby about, you're coming to take our customers. It's not fair. They shouldn't take advantage of us, bro. Get real.
That's the name of the game. They call it a free market for a reason, because it's
for
free.
A reason.
And they can do whatever they need to do to get those customers, even if they come from you.
Right.
All right. So the second story I had in second string is Nothing CEO. If you're not familiar with Nothing, they are a Google phone developer. They make phones that are comparable to Google Pixel. They make phones that are comparable to Samsung Galaxies. They're Nothing. They started up in like around the pandemic. And at the time, of course, we were all forced to stay home. What was it called? I forget the name of it. We were quarantined. Is that the name of it? Yeah. Quarantined in our homes. And this is around the time that the Nothing company kind of took off. Now, fast forward to today, Nothing has now mandated that its 450 employees will have to come into the company's London office 5 days a week. And the CEO, his name is Carl Pei, said in an email to his users, making them come back into the office, remote work is not compatible with a high ambition level plus high speed. He told his employees who are worried about flexibility that this is a company for grownups. So I just wanted to get your thoughts, comments, opinions on remote work, since both of us, have been remote work for a long time. How do you personally feel about remote workers not being, quote, grown up?
So I don't think this has anything to do with what did he say? High ambition level plus high speed. It has nothing to do with that. What I believe a lot of this return to work stuff is, it's a way for companies to do soft layoffs, because there are some people who just, they're like, I'm not coming back. I will find other work. My lifestyle is not conducive. You gave us this, remote work option. I've built my life around it. I've been successful. We've hit our deadlines. There hasn't been any delay. And now all of a sudden you want to kind of throw this at us. I think in not just Nothing's case, but in many of these companies' cases, it's a way to reduce their overhead, which is typically human capital. Human resources are the biggest expense that a lot of these companies have.
And the first thing to go.
And it's the first thing to go. And this way, they're saying, they're wrapping it in this bow of, we have to be able to collaborate. In-person collaboration fosters creativity and blah, 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 blah. And they're able to lower their headcount without having to actually do a layoff.
Right.
I think that's all this is about. This isn't about none of this other BS about high level of
working better and
whatever and grown-ups and whatever. It's the fact that they are trying to reduce their headcount without having to become the latest company on the block, because in the last couple of weeks we've seen some pretty big layoffs come out. They don't want to be labeled as the bad guy who are laying people off this late into the year. And this way it's forcing people to make that decision.
Yep. And especially I could somewhat fathom and understand a company that was full in work 5 days a week. COVID hit, people had to be quarantined. They said, all right, we need to adjust. We need to adapt. Now that, air quotes, COVID is over, we want to return back to the way things were prior to COVID. You could have somewhat of an argument for that. But with this company, like I mentioned, it was birthed after launching remotely during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020.
Bro, you've never been in the office.
Exactly my point. So this guy says, hold on, he says, those unable to transition from remote work should leave the company and, quote, find an environment where you thrive. He also says, Pay's goal, according to the email published on LinkedIn, is to improve collaboration and innovation across design, engineering, and manufacturing, which he argues, quote, does not work well remotely. I'm like, that's a slap in the face to all your employees that have been doing just that very thing at home. So are you implying that the work that your employees is doing up until now has been trash? And the only way we can improve productivity and improve collaboration if we come into the office 5 days a week? It's like, come on, man. People see through that. We see through the BS. We see through it. All right. So that's going to do it for Second String. We're going to move into For the Culture. And while this is not nothing necessarily culturally, but it is culturally as in, Disney, right? Everybody loves Disney, specifically the Disney parks. And Disney as a company has prided itself on being one of the happiest places on earth, yada, 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 so on and so forth, right? Well, an incident happened a while ago, and a couple was at a Disney park. They were at the Disney park in Florida, and they went out to eat. The wife is allergic, has a heavy peanut allergy. They went to this particular restaurant, I think it's at Epcot, that people as in like Disney recommended that they go to this spot because they are embracing of people with allergies. They go to the restaurant, they ask the staff, they ask the waiters, they ask cooks, hey,
they asked them multiple times.
Hey, Disney said this restaurant, because, is good for us because we have heavy allergies. We want to make sure. They say, yeah, everything's fine. The wife eats the food. She has an allergic reaction. They rush her to the hospital. She ultimately dies of this allergic reaction, right? The husband, as anybody would do, y'all told me, y'all said, everything was cool. Everything was not cool. I lost my wife. I'm suing y'all.
Yes.
Disney's lawyers come to they request that the suit be thrown out, and this is gonna blow your mind. They want the case thrown out because the husband back in like 2019 signed up for a free trial of Disney Plus, the streaming service. And in that terms of service, they said, if you sue us, we have to go through arbitration first before we go to court. And since you signed that terms of service for Disney Plus, the streaming app, that applies across all of, allegedly, that applies across applies across all of Disney's platforms. So can you imagine something happening to your wife and you take them people to court because they lied to your face, number one, and then the lawyers want to get it thrown out because I'm a Disney Plus subscriber
5 years ago?
And I only did the trial for free and I signed up and I don't use it no more. And because of that, I should have went to arbitration first instead of taking y'all.
Because you killed my wife.
Right. So my question is, even though this is what lawyers do, even though this is what big companies do to get out of paying people to whatever the case may be, is this the right move for Disney? Because they have prided themselves being the happiest, or whatever the phrase is, the most happiest place on earth. But when something like this happens, instead of y'all saying our bad, let us do what we can, or whatever the case may be, you're going to use some weird gotcha loophole terms of service thing that has nothing to do with the actual place, time, and action that actually happened. And you're going to use that as your get out of jail free. Is that the look? Is that the attitude you want to put towards the Disney now? When, again, like you've always been the happiest place on earth. Is that the right move? And then also, I'll just go ahead and ask both of them. As a result, do we now have to actually read every terms of service on anything we sign up for, because it could have repercussions inside and possibly outside of this thing that I'm signing up for?
So the first thing is, those Disney lawyers are stupid, period. And I say that because there's no amount of money that you're going to be able to pay to bring this man's wife back. She's gone. She's not coming back.
Right.
What you can do is say, you know what, this didn't happen. Technically, this was in a restaurant, because I think one of the things they're trying to say is the restaurant isn't a part of Disney, but I'm like, it's in the Disney park, so you still have some liability. But they were trying to say that it wasn't necessarily a Disney owned restaurant. But the thing is, they could have came out and said, you know what, we understand that this isn't a Disney owned restaurant, but it was in our park. Let us offer you X amount of dollars for this. Now, of course, it can be some back and forth about, money and how much and those things. But what's going to happen now? They're still going to have to pay this man for his wife's death, because there's no way around that. She died on your property,
right?
At your suggestion. What they're not taking into account is the hit that they're going to take to their reputation. So that's an additional bill that you now have to pay for, when you could have just said, you know what? Sorry that your wife died. It wasn't our intent, but it happened. So let's see what we can do to help mitigate some of your distress. We're going to use a freaking trial for a streaming service to try and stop you from being compensated for your wife being killed on our property. So you're still going to have to pay these people this money, and you're probably going to have to pay them even more than what you probably would have initially had to pay. Now you've taken a hit to your reputation, because you look shisty as hell trying to tell this man we need to go to arbitration because you signed up for a trial for a streaming service. Do you know how stupid and inhumane that makes you look
Right.
as
And
a company,
cold. Right.
right, who frames himself as the happiest place on earth. Bring your children here, bring your family here. You're going to have the greatest time of your life. But at the same time, we don't want to compensate you for your loved one being killed because of some food allergy that we should have, known better for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you really messed this up.
Yeah.
You messed this up bad.
Yeah. So I found a current story, and according to NBC News, Disney backpedals on man saying he can't sue over wife's death because he signed up for Disney Plus. That's just crazy. Let me read this again. Disney backpedals on saying a man can't sue over his wife's death because he signed up for Disney Plus. It just blows my mind. So let me keep reading. Disney has backpedaled on its stance in a wrongful death suit filed by a widower whose wife died after having eaten in a restaurant in Disney World, now saying it will waive arbitration that it argued the man agreed to when he signed up for Disney Plus. So now they got some heat on them as far as public opinion. Now they're like,
now they want to do the right thing. But what you've done now is, in addition to paying for this woman's death, you now have to pay this man for what do they call it? Not bereavement, but distress.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
That thing.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna have to pay him for what you've done to him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you're backpedaling on what you already said. So you should have just done the right thing up front.
You should have done the right thing up front. And the quote says,
and here you go.
Yep. It goes on to say, at Disney, we strive to put humanity above all other considerations. With such unique circumstances as the ones in this case, we believe this situation warrants a sensitive approach to expedite a resolution for the family who had experienced such a painful loss, said Josh DeMauro, chairman of Disney Experiences. It's like,
so they're still hanging on to this terms of service thing.
They're still
holding on to it.
They still want it thrown out. But what they're saying is, well, it's okay if you just take us to court. We're going to forget about the fact that we wanted you to go to arbitration first. But, you still got to sue us to get the money back.
Thank you.
Get compensation, rather.
Be appreciative of this?
Right.
It's wild. And to your second question.
Oh, before you get there. Hold on. Before you get there. And so this is even crazy. Piccolo, who is the husband, sued the restaurant at Disney seeking more than $50,000 in damages under the Florida Wrongful Death Act. So Disney is all mad because this dude is suing for only $50K. It's like, come on, man. How low y'all got?
How cheap can you freaking be? Like, really? If I was this man, I go back. I was like, nope, run me 50 mil, bro. You got it. Mm-hmm. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
Run it up.
Yep. He's trying to do like, look, I just need y'all to cover expenses and to, say I'm sorry. Basically, that's what $50,000 is.
He is not even trying to get the bag. Mr. Piccolo, get the bag.
Especially
get
from
the
Disney.
bag. They can afford it, and your wife is gone.
Mm-hmm.
They should pay for this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Get your bag, sir.
It just blows my mind how low companies will stoop and then try to again turn it around when the heat is on. It's like, why can y'all just done right by this dude?
Right.
Especially since he wasn't asking for 50 million, 500 million, 500,000. This dude asked for $50,000 and y'all was like, nope, that's what you get for signing up for Disney Plus. That's what you get.
And you shouldn't have ate there no way, even though we told you it was the best place to eat.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Wild.
Yeah, buddy.
These companies are, oh, gee, I don't know. I don't even have the words. Have the words. So
going back to, like I said, my second question is like, when you sign up for their new service and they have you click that little checkbox, I'm like, I'm gonna need y'all to read that because you never know. You may lose a leg and they come in and be like, well, we don't know what to tell you.
You signed it away.
You
gave up your rights.
You gave up your rights to sue us because you bought this 2-for-1 deal. That's what it said in our terms of service. Now you just legless.
So we're supposed to read these terms of services. Nobody does because one, it's really long. Mm-hmm. Two, it's a bunch of legalese that you're probably not going to understand anyway. unless you're an attorney, most people are impatient. It's like, I just want to get to what I'm trying to get to, and they click it. But if this shows anything, points to any indication of how low some companies will go to absolve themselves of the responsibility that they should have, this should give people a second thought when it comes to signing these, especially now in the age of AI and, generative AI and all these ways that if you sign up for something, even if you're giving up your right to your data, whether it be your likeness, your actual image of people who are on this with you, who happen just to be, in proximity. And it's one of those things where you just really don't know what you need. And I was, everything now is a service. And I was reading something that somebody wrote on Twitter, and it almost knocked me over. She was saying how she has a printer and she was printing something, and it told her, oh, you're coming to the end of your printer subscription. So you bought the printer, you bought the ink, but there's still a service that tells you how many items you can print per month on your subscription. So but you own it. You bought the printer. It's yours.
They got a term for that.
It's yours.
They got a term for that. It's called hardware as a service. That is an actual term out there now, to where you are not only just buying the product, you are buying the service that it runs on. Think of cars are coming this way now. Like you mentioned, printers are coming that way. It's coming. It's
even
ready.
Though you own the hardware and the hardware is already built in.
Mark my words, you will start to hear more of hardware as a service going forward. So you
really don't own it. You don't own it.
According to them, you do. You just don't own the technology that it runs on, and you got to pay us to run the thing.
To continuously run it.
Yep. Yep. Look it up. This
is insane.
All right. That's going to do it. That's going to do it for the culture. We're going to move into the hookup. So everybody by now regularly connects and disconnects Bluetooth devices to their iPhone. Let's just use iPhone right now. Bluetooth speakers, your Apple Watch, anything else that Bluetooth, your in-car service, whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to do a tip for the week of the quickest ways to actually connect and disconnect Bluetooth services. So right now, the regular way is to open up iPhone settings, scroll down to Bluetooth, then it'll show you a list of devices that are connected or you can connect to. You click that device and connect it, right? So there's two quicker ways. So the first way to do it is if you have the settings app, if you can find the settings app on your phone, instead of just tapping the settings app to open up your settings, if you do a long press and hold on the settings app, it's going to pop up a short menu display that's going to give you Wi-Fi. It's going to give you this, that, and it's also going to give you Bluetooth. If you tap that, it'll open up directly to the Bluetooth section to where you can then click the actual devices to connect them and disconnect them. So that's the first way. The second way is because some people don't have the settings app on their home screen because they don't go into that enough. So if they actually wanted to do it, they'd have to search through and find the settings app. Well, instead of doing that, what you can do is if you swipe down from the top of your phone screen to reveal the control center, then you tap and hold that connectivity box that has the Wi-Fi, has the cellular, has the Bluetooth, and it has what's the other thing? The last thing is
airplane mode.
AirPlay. It's airplane mode, it's cellular connectivity, it's Wi-Fi, and it's
Wi-Fi
Bluetooth.
and Bluetooth. Yep.
Yeah, if you press and hold that box, it'll expand that box and give you all the different options. If you then long press the Bluetooth icon, it'll give you a list of devices that you can connect to and disconnect to. If you just tap that device, it'll actually connect and disconnect. So that's my tip for the week. Instead of having to go through the Apple settings and then scroll down to Bluetooth, these are two ways you can actually connect to Bluetooth devices faster, because I'm always connecting and disconnecting. I've got a Bluetooth speaker in my shower. I've got a Bluetooth speaker that I use for exercising. I've got a Bluetooth speaker that I use in the yard when I'm doing yard work. I've collected all of these Bluetooth speakers.
These Bluetooth devices.
So I have them in different parts of my house. So frequently 2 or 3 times a day, I'm kind of connecting and disconnecting. So I just thought I'd do that hookup to show you quicker ways to actually disconnect and connect to Bluetooth devices.
And I just tried both those while you were talking, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. So that's going to do it for the hookup. And Nika, if you don't have anything else, that's going to do it for this week's show. So tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva everywhere on the internet.
And you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH. To find our show, please go to snoboscast.com to get all of the details about the show, a little bit about us. You can actually listen to the show on the internet, and you can support the show. So if you go to snoboscast.com, that is our one-stop shop to find out everything you need to know about the show. Until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.